Hello there, I hope you're having a nice day. Today we'll be looking into Cyno's mysterious origins. At first, it seemed like a simple topic, but in order to explain things as in-depth as I can, I'll go over the lore of the Scarlet King, his retainers, Hermanubis, and some ancient Egyptian and Greek mythology. So make sure you're comfy, and we'll begin. We know that he's from the desert, likely an area we haven't discovered yet, as the people of Aru village didn't seem to recognize him, other than him being the General Mahamatra, and you'd think if he was born or raised there, somebody would have mentioned, or at least alluded to it. His affiliation is with somewhere we've never heard of before, the Temple of Silence. This isn't mentioned anywhere else, apart from his character description, but from his clothing and general themes, we can speculate on what this place might be. First, we'll have to look into the Egyptian mythology a lot of Sumeru's desert region is inspired by. His most obvious inspiration is Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the underworld from the first dynasty of ancient Egypt. The jackal head of Anubis was likely inspired from the jackals that could often be found around the tombs of ancient Egypt looking for food, but these jackals were actually a subspecies of African golden wolf, which would fit in with Cyno's constellation name, meaning golden wolf. One of the roles of Anubis was the protector of tombs, which we can see Cyno has some affinity for during his character quest, keeping the location of the Temple of Desolation a secret to protect people from the dangers inside. The most famous story of Anubis protecting the dead was when he was in charge of the mummification of Osiris, and Osiris's killer and brother Set appeared in the form of a leopard to attack his body again. Anubis branded Set with a hot iron rod and flayed his skin, wearing it as a warning to any that would seek to desecrate the tombs of the dead. This story was used to explain how the leopard got its spots. He was also known as the Guardian of the Scales, and after escorting the souls of the dead to the Hall of Two Truths, within the Duat or underworld, he would judge them by weighing their hearts on a scale against a feather of the goddess Ma'at. She represented truth, balance, and justice. So if the heart was impure and weighed more than the feather, the soul would be rejected and devoured by the crocodile-headed goddess Ammit, the devourer of souls. This was known as the second death, or death of the soul, and would result in the total annihilation of that person's existence. Cyno's title, Twilight Arbiter, fits in with Anubis's role too, as an arbiter is a judge, and Twilight has often represented the underworld in mythology, basically describing him as a judge of the underworld. His 4th ascension passive, Authority over the 9 bows, is another reference to Anubis, with the 9 bows commonly representing foreigners or enemies of Egypt, placed at his feet to show his domination over them, and in a more abstract sense, could represent the disorder or chaos opposed to the order he upheld. Now for the Temple of Silence. In the later period of Egypt known as the Middle Kingdom, Osiris took the role that Anubis once held as god of the underworld, and was also known as the Lord of Silence, though Anubis would still perform his duties of escorting and protecting the dead. Anubis was first said to be a son of Ra, but after the rise in popularity of Osiris, he was said to be Osiris's son instead. The Lord of Silence title is one that reminded me of the Scarlet King, as he's described as the Silent Lord in the remnant glow of Scorching Might. He's also known as a king of warriors, horticulturalists, and sages, while Osiris was a god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation. And this is where things get a little bit complicated. Another of the Scarlet King's titles was the Lord of the Deserts, and he's described as the blazing golden sun. Ra was the god of the sun, order, kings, and the sky, and Set was the god of deserts, storms, disorder, violence, and foreigners. Set also ruled over the Red Land and is associated with the Red Crown, known as the Deshret, or Red One, so you can see how all of this can get confusing. To be clear, I think that all three are influences on the Scarlet King, along with other gods like Amun, but to keep things concise, let's focus on Osiris, as I think that's the most interesting route to take from here. Osiris was said by some to be the son of the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut, which would tie in with the Scarlet King's heavenly origin, mentioned in the Lay of Al-Ahmar, another of the Scarlet King's names. They say that Al-Ahmar was a son of the sky. That is why he was known as the king of the world, and received the fervent faith of countless people from the three great tribes, and was even adored by the elusive jinn. Whenever he looked up to the sky and recalled the boundless paradise high above, and the merciless reign of thousands of years past, Al-Ahmar could not help but lower his noble head and sigh helplessly. Resurrection was pretty important with the mythology of Osiris, being killed by his brother Set and diced into pieces, which were then scattered across Egypt. Isis, Osiris's wife, collected all of these pieces with the help of other gods, including Thoth and Anubis, and revived Osiris for long enough that he could give her a child, resulting in the birth of Horus. This is another similarity to the Scarlet King, with the Eremites often talking about his resurrection, and him possibly resurrecting once before, with the line from the Gilded Dream Circlet, Shadow of the Sand King. The golden sun fell, then rose again, clothing the sea of sand in an opulent death shroud. A side note here, but I think that Al-Haytham fits into the role of Thoth quite well, with him being the scribe of the academia, and Thoth being the god of wisdom, writing, hieroglyphics, science, and judgment, as well as having the head of an ibis, like the Ibis King, one of the Scarlet King's retainers, known as the scribe of all scribes. This gets even stranger when we consider Thoth's Greek counterpart Hermes, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Of course, with Al-Haytham meaning young hawk, it could be argued that he represents Horus, the son of Osiris, too. One more thing on Osiris is that he ruled the heavenly paradise known as the Field of Reeds, that souls would be allowed into if they passed the test of weighing their hearts. And guess what the ancient Egyptian name for that place was? Aru. Just like Aru village is where the survivors of the Scarlet King's kingdom would come to live after he sacrificed himself to save them. So, with Sino representing Anubis, his affiliation with the Temple of Silence likely refers to Osiris, the Lord of Silence, who in our case would be the Scarlet King. In the Archon quest, we see one of the last Hermanubis priests of the Scarlet King, who is dressed the same way as Sino, and we see Sino lingering here in recognition or realization of this connection as we go to leave. This priest was known as Kasala, which is likely from the word Kasala, a literary genre that consists of praising a person or thing, quite fitting for a priest. This seems to have been Sino's ancestor. Hermanubis represented the Egyptian priesthood and was a combination of two gods, Anubis from Egyptian mythology and Hermes from Greek mythology, popular during the later Roman domination over Egypt. This could be a hint towards Sumeru's links with the ancient world, before the second throne of the heavens arrived, as the most Greek-inspired region we've visited so far is Enkanomiya, a part of the first civilization. Khemenu Temple could also be a reference to an ancient Egyptian city of the same name, known as Hermopolis to the ancient Greeks, meaning the city of Hermes. If my side note before means anything, then I think the combination of both Hermes, Thoth, and Anubis, or in our case, Al-Hatham and Sino, are an important part of uncovering Sumer's ancient history. Perhaps if the reincarnation or inherited will themes are followed, there were once two sages, much like Al-Hatham and Sino, that worked together, and over time became known as one person, the greatest sage, Hermanubis. Even one as wise as the greatest of sages, Hermanubis, could never have known that the valiant tribe that once could equal the dragons would be reduced to corpse-eating monsters 1,000 years later, and their sullied honor and bones would be buried for eternity beneath the gilded dunes. This could explain why Sino's staff of the Scarlet Sands is only one of a paired set of scepters, and the other seems to have been remade into a sword, like Al-Hatham uses. One of a paired set of scepters, fashioned from obsidian. Legend has it that these staves grant the right to lead the people of the desert, but no retainer now lives who can verify the proper appearance of these regalia. And from Nilu's sword, the key of Kaj Nisut, it says, one of a paired set of scepters fashioned from obsidian. They say that this can be used as a key to open the gate to a paradise that lies at the end of the ocean of sand. But this doesn't fit perfectly, as Nilu's sword should be Al-Hatham's if this theory were true, and there's something a little strange with the Scarlet King's retainers. The three retainers were known as the Goat King, the Minister of all Ministers, the Ibis King, the Scribe of all Scribes, and the Crocodile King, the Commander of all Commanders. Notice here that there is no Jackal or Wolf King, representing Anubis or Hermanubis, and the Ibis King calls the Scarlet King the greatest of all sages, as Hermanubis was described as a few sentences before. But something feels off to me about the Ibis King's words I'll get into soon. It seems that Sino's ancestor was important to the Scarlet King though, if they were given the staff of Scarlet Sands, and there are more parallels in ancient Egyptian mythology. We have a place called Sekhem Hall, Sekhem being a symbol for power or form, which was also a part of the ancient Egyptian concept of the soul or spirit. Osiris was called the Great Sekhem, so it was often used as a symbol of the underworld deity. This seems to have led to the Sekhem scepter also becoming an emblem of Anubis in the temple of Hu, known as the enclosure of the Sekhem. With Hermanubis sort of replacing Anubis in later periods, and Osiris replacing Anubis as god of the underworld, it's possible that Osiris and Hermanubis have been mixed together to represent the Scarlet King, and it would fit with him bringing dangerous knowledge into the world, as Hermanubis was known as an investigator of truth. Perhaps this truth was similar to the forbidden knowledge Orobashi had to die for, or since the Egyptian word chemia means transmutation of the earth, and alchemy is the precursor to chemistry, the Scarlet King could be the one who originally introduced the art of chemia to Tevat, with Khonria rediscovering the art after his death. One other weird thing is that the Ibis King doesn't seem to have a statue like his other retainers. We have the Goat King, Khnum, here from the Golden Dream Quest, the only statue I've found of him so far. We have the Crocodile King, Sobek, in a lot of places underground, and the last statue that appears the most is one that does not look like an ibis, but rather a hawk or falcon like Horus or Ra, most likely representing the Scarlet King. This does get a bit convoluted, But if Al-Haytham is a representation or reincarnation of the Ibis King, then it's possible he is represented as the falcon or hawk-headed figure here, but it just seems strange to call him the Ibis King when the heads of the other two retainers fit their names perfectly. The Jinni telling us about the three retainers curses their names, seemingly for misleading the Scarlet King or betraying him in some way. So going down that train of thought, perhaps the Ibis King was the main instigator of this betrayal, or at least the one who took the blame, causing his statues to be destroyed or never built at all. So I think that the divine spirit that Cyno channels isn't the Scarlet King, as he seems to have erased himself entirely to keep the forbidden knowledge from being rediscovered. Anubis protecting Osiris from Set, and Hermanubis representing the priesthood say to me that the divine spirit was a god or adepti-like being that served under the Scarlet King as a protector, and we can see this in the Anubis statues placed as protectors in nearly every tomb. Anyway, back to Cyno's past. In some stories, Anubis was the son of Osiris and his wife's sister, Nephthys. After Osiris mistook her for his wife, she abandoned the baby Anubis in the desert, but luckily for him, Osiris's wife, Isis, found and raised him herself. This could be the inspiration for Cyno's past, abandoned as a baby at the Temple of Silence and discovered by a priestess of Hermanubis who represents Isis, as Cyno represents Anubis. Perhaps she recognized something about him and his ancestry, so decided to teach him the magic and secrets she knew. I think we'll hear more of her, or maybe even get to meet her, if we get a new desert town or city in future patches. I didn't expect to get into the Scarlet King and Al-Haytham too, but this rabbit hole was just too interesting not to get further into, even if it is as confusing as navigating the underground areas of the desert at times. But it was fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the history of Sumeru unfolds. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found the video as interesting as I did researching it. If you did, consider leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing with a friend if you're feeling generous. Good luck on your wishes, and I hope you have a great day.